Everyone, today we are talking to Amanda Brennen. Amanda is a veteran spouse. We met through the Raleigh Vet Connect. So it's a organization connecting all the veterans in the Raleigh area. And Amanda is an entrepreneur. She doesn't own a franchise, but she branched out on being an entrepreneur and started her own company. And so today we're going to discuss being an entrepreneur and what that's like and and how she got started and where she's going now.
Sounds great.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about your company and what it is you do at Winshire Collaborative.
Yeah. I'll start with a little bit about myself, just because I think it's a little bit of a funny story. But I grew up in Maryland. I met my husband there. When I was getting my undergraduate degree, I thought I was going to do something different than what I do now. We just started talking about how technology has changed things. I thought I was going to do something along graphic design journalism together because I was on the yearbook committee and I really loved that. So I put all my eggs in that basket and I had to change when I got to college because it didn't work out. But I ended up getting a degree in communication. And then I graduated, and during a recession, it was a tough time, and ended up landing in kind of an HR space doing training and recruitment. And I've actually stayed in that since. So I've been in that kind of world for about 15 years. A lot of what I do is not the traditional, typical HR stuff, but more around organizational development. So people, programs, creating process that has to do with the employee life cycle, and then anything that just has to do with bettering teams and bettering leaders so that they can perform better. And then about a year and a half ago, went out on my own and started my own company, Winshire Collaborative, just with the intention of being able to have more control over what I do and how I do it and what my work life looks like, and still doing the same kinds of work. So working primarily with smaller companies to help them create kind of best-in-class process, helping them to develop their teams. I do some training and workshops for them, and then also sometimes helping with leadership development.
So what got you started down the path of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So I guess there's a theme in my life that I keep ending up doing things that I didn't think I was going to do. So probably a unique thing about me is that I didn't plan on working for myself. I didn't plan on starting my own company, but I felt a lot of pressure last year when I started this. And I'm saying pressure, but in a good way for me, to do something different. I have 3 young kids. I have a husband who is still a reservist and then also works full-time for another company during the day. And then we have kids in sports. We have really active kids and we don't have the family support that a lot of people have. So I think last year I felt this pressure of how can I keep working and keep helping people in organizations, but do it differently so that I can help the people that matter the most to me, my family. So that was my biggest deciding factor to go do something on my own, was being able to work and do what I loved, but also having the time and the space for my family.
Like you were just talking about. So I found a big reason and benefit in most cases working for yourself can provide the work-life balance that a person is looking for. How has being a business owner benefited your work-life balance?
Yeah, I think it's benefited it because I have complete control over what I do. I mean, there's the part where if I didn't work at all, I'm not going to make money. I'm not going to be successful. But that's also kind of the driving force of let me be really productive and smart with the time that I do have during the day. So I'm not working part-time. I'm not lazy or doing anything crazy. I think it's a motivator really, because you're I really want to be with my family. I want to be finished with my day, in the late afternoon. What do I need to do today to set myself up for that? So it's been a beautiful thing, and my attention and my focus and how I spend my time. And then of course it's allowed me more flexibility with my day. So like last week, I got 3 things from my kids' school, 3 different field trips. And I was like, I'm going on all of them. And that's kind of the beauty of working for yourself. I can just block off my calendar and I can have the balance without any of like the guilt or needing to get it approved. And I think that's a big difference. Like, there are plenty of companies that are very flexible. You can be working for them and you can still do those things. But being an entrepreneur, you're like, I know I can always do those things. I can do them
Right.
without permission. I can do them last minute. I can figure out my day. And I think that has been probably one of the best things for myself as a mother. And I think from the things that my kids have seen from me, like, hey, can you come to this last minute thing that's very important, but it's in the middle of the day and it's only 40 minutes? And working at a company, especially if you have to go into an office and you have kind of rigid structures, you're like, oh, I don't know, it's going to mess up my whole day. But now I'm like, yep. So I say yes to pretty much everything. And I think that's been great for me.
Yeah, I see the same thing. Like last week, all of a sudden I was going on a field trip and that's going to
Yep.
last all day.
Yep.
So, so those things I'm able to handle, but then also, yeah, if some companies you may work for might be very flexible, but at the
Yeah.
same time, there's an extent where they can be that flexible, right? You have to, I guess, yeah, you get to choose the 40 hours a week you work, you
Yeah.
know? And like you said, being productive. So there was always that, I don't know if it was a saying, there was that, the 4 hour work week. I think
Yeah.
there
The
was a book.
book.
Yeah. Right. So
Yep.
this is how you would do that. You wouldn't be able to work 4 hours a week on at a regular job. You
No,
have to do it yourself. So,
no. What
um,
one of the toughest lessons that I think people don't realize though as an entrepreneur is that you actually have to set the boundaries, because I found when I first got started, I was like so excited about what I was doing and I was like, I'm ready to, go from step 1 to step 100, and I was trying to do all of the steps in like my first 2 weeks. And one of the things I had to work on was like, you can build something great, but you can't build something great today. So just like do those small things. And that's where I became pretty good with my time. Like, okay, I want to be able to do this thing. Here's the things I want to accomplish today in this window. And then I think I felt better about it. But it's actually the opposite in some cases too, because you probably know, you see an email at like 7 p.m., 8 p.m., and you're like, I could just respond to this. Like, I don't have to, but I could. And you have to make the choices as an entrepreneur. Like,
and
do I want
sometimes
to
you
do that?
don't, yeah. And sometimes depending on the clientele base, you may not want to,
Yeah.
so that you can show like, hey, I don't work past at this time. Because all
Yeah.
of a sudden you respond or a text message comes in and you start responding, then they know, oh, well, he's available all the time anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
I think some people think that like, okay, you're an entrepreneur, you better be on the grind all day, every day. And it's like, yeah, maybe you could, but that doesn't mean you're going to be more successful. And having boundaries and being smart with your time does not mean that you can't
yes,
be
you do have to be,
successful.
you have to be disciplined
Yes.
and organized with your time. And you're right, the steps. Um, if you start trying to do all the steps at once or go all over the place, it's harder. Just do one step at a time.
Yes. Take off
That's the
something
only way you
small.
can really move. You can't just do everything all at once. Have you ever, I've mentioned this before at other times, but have you ever read the book Good to Great?
Yes. I think it's
So
behind
like,
me. Oh, yeah,
oh,
it
there
sure
you
is.
go.
You can see it.
so,
There you go.
so the hedgehog and the fox. The
Yep.
hedgehog starts to build its core, whereas the fox starts going everywhere in every direction, and it's just harder to build that way. I mean, you could eventually get there, but if you're going in 10 different directions, you may never complete one task. I
Yes.
guess I guess that's the ADHD mindset or
No,
something.
no,
It,
I don't think that I have ADHD, but
but
I think
but I think
it's
the entrepreneur, we start
yes.
thinking so much. I need to
Yeah.
do this and this and this and this, but then you have to have the discipline to come back and say, even in I see it even in franchising. I mean, they give you that structure, and sometimes it's hard for people to think, "Let me stay in that structure."
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the things I see people fail is when they go rogue. They try to start doing things themselves or marketing. they tell you to go do your marketing and they start going in 100 different directions.
Yeah.
Do something, you know, very well and great at that one thing before you start the next.
Yeah. But that is a difference, I think, of franchising versus just completely building something on your own, is that there is a little bit more structure there. Like, franchising isn't going to tell you exactly how to do it, but it's going to give you some of the things. Like marketing things, for example, I have personally spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out, what should I do for marketing? Like, how do I hone in on my target client? Where do I find them? What's the messaging I need for them? And I know that some of the franchising is a little bit easier, especially because they're brands that people know. Like, I've got people who know me, which is great. Not that many people, but you know, if you talk about some of the brands that you represent, people know them. So your marketing can, I think we talked about this when we met, like it can get turned on instantly, you know, open for business, and you know what that company does. I had to start from scratch, like, open for business, let me try to tell everybody what I'm doing. So I think
Right.
that's a difference too.
Yeah, I think I actually had that in my list of questions since
Oh, sorry.
we're getting it. Well, no, I was saying since we're already
Yeah.
getting to that and we're kind of in that conversation. Um, yeah, what is it that you see that's different from starting your own business and being an entrepreneur? Like, because it would be just like starting a mom and pop shop.
Yep.
You know, you're building from scratch, whereas I know you said you have friends that are in franchises. So
Yep.
what's the difference that you see there? That
So I mean, I guess there's a few differences. In my opinion, there's probably more risk in doing what I did, because you cannot say for sure that someone's going to be successful with it. But obviously in franchising, if I said, "Hey Sean, tell me what, you know, the most recent franchisee that started this, how have they been successful? What their first year looked like?" You can pull up a bunch of stuff and you can probably tell me, like, all right, they started making money at month 3, at month 4, they did that. Like, you can probably tell me that stuff. I went in completely blind. So I had a gut feeling, which is a ridiculous thing to say about any big risky decision, but I had a gut feeling that I could make it work, but I had no idea really what it was going to look like. So the risk is probably a bit different. And then just the time to ramp is a lot different. Like, I was online trying to figure out like a business license and how do I get the best bank and do I need insurance and what kind of insurance. And for me, I had to figure out creating all of my contracts. I had to create my sales process. I've had to create everything, my invoicing, all of the things that come with running a business. And I think the difference in franchising is that you've got some support. Like me, I was like
Yeah, all that
phoning a
stuff is
friend.
handed to you in like a big
Yeah.
package. Whereas that stuff, if you're trying to create it on your own, it might take months.
Yes.
Or along the way, you're going to find all the mistakes you're making, or the not only mistakes, or along the way as like you said, contract. You know,
Yes. Basic
all of a
thing.
sudden you give a contract to somebody and they recognize something in there that should have been in there, and now you have to go back and kind of retool it to something else.
Yep.
I remember doing that before, and I had a client that was a lawyer,
Yeah.
and so they start reading it and they want to change. There's words they want to change.
Yeah.
Oh, you need adding words into it. It's like, they want to make it all lawyers speak,
Yep.
so
And you're like, I thought this was good.
right.
Well, so that's actually a funny thing too. So things I didn't know that I was going to have to worry about by myself were like finding an attorney. So contracts, I mean, that's your way of getting paid. If you don't have a contract in place, whether somebody told you they were going to pay you or not is fine. It doesn't matter if you don't have the contract. So stuff like that I've had to go do on my own, like have an attorney review things, get my own insurance, figure out all of those things, figure out what my whole process is. And then the marketing stuff, we talked about it a little bit, but like that is stuff that I spend and have spent a long time on. Like, what should my proposal look like? What should my proposal process be? Creating my own like decks and my own one pagers and my own everything that's trying to have a cohesive brand. And franchising, you get a lot of that stuff, and that stuff that's taken me, I'm 18 months in. It's taken me 18 months to figure some of
Right.
that stuff out.
I I was actually just talking to a franchise earlier, and it's a very new franchise. So the founder, he's doing well with, he has like two of his own locations. He wanted to franchise it, but it's taking them forever to get a franchise. His product
Mm.
is great. He feels like it's very successful, but when he just like designing stuff, he's not good at
Yeah.
designing all the PowerPoints to put together to present to a candidate who wants to buy a franchise, or, you have to make it all shiny and pretty
You
for someone
do?
to want to buy it.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, I mean, that product is great. He does great work when he goes to the jobs himself and does it. Right. But then working in it, sometimes you have to figure out a way to work on it. And then, but yeah, all that stuff, the website,
Oh,
if it
yeah.
doesn't look, if you're putting it together on something and it still looks like it was from, I don't know, 1998 or something like that, you know what I mean? Like old
Oh,
school, and
yeah.
it's not all new and shiny. Someone may not even look at it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I've made probably a lot of mistakes that other people have made in trying to figure out, like, how do I get people to contact me, like setting up Calendly, I don't actually use that, but setting up a CRM. All of these types of things are things you have to figure out, and they can take you a really long time. And I will be
right.
honest, I probably still don't. This is
And there's
probably
so
not
many of
where
those
I'll stay.
programs out there.
Yeah.
You can start to get on one, start with one and then realize it's not the right one. And then
Yep.
all of a sudden you're changing it. And then you're trying to upload all your Excel spreadsheets,
Oh.
and yeah.
Yes.
So again, yeah, you can start somewhere where it's already packaged.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But
an attractive thing. I think people probably stray away from franchises sometimes because they're like, "Oh, I don't want to have to buy into that." But if I could calculate the time and the money that I have spent in the last year and a half trying to figure out a lot of those things that are given to you if you decide to own a
right,
franchise.
if there was a franchise that was what you do, then it may have been easier.
Oh yeah, I
But
feel very confident in saying it would have been easier.
um, so in this whole process, what's a lessons learned from starting a business?
Oh gosh, I learn them every day, every day, because I make a lot of mistakes. Um, I think, well, one of the lessons that I learned was really just around boundaries. Like when you work for yourself, you can't get too excited about anything. Like I've got a lot of excitement and I want to be excited, but I have to be smart about it too, and not just like chase the shiny object or get the thing done fast. Like be smart about it. And that's been hard, a hard lesson to learn and to figure out. I'm always figuring it out. Um, and probably the other lesson is like, as an entrepreneur, I'll start as a person in the corporate world, you're, kind of like this. And as an entrepreneur, you're like, the ride is crazy. And you're just, if you're going to do it, then you buckle up and you just get ready for it, because nothing is ever what you think it's going to be. Like, if you think it's going to be really, really hard, you get excited when something happens faster and it's easier than you thought. If you think it's going to be easy and then you go through a tough time, you can get in your head, especially when you're by yourself, like, is this a good choice? Should I have done this? Am I doing this right? Am I, missing something? So, I think it's just understanding that there's some highs and some lows, and it's probably different than the corporate world, but it's
Mhm.
also beautiful if you're ready for it and if you like change and like things being different. And
It can be a roller coaster
oh
ride.
yeah.
When I had my franchise, I there was times where it's like, you know, you want to be dancing on the tables. You're like,
Yes.
yes, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what happened this month? Where
Yeah.
where did everybody go?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sometimes it just like, I remember for some odd reason it was like May and September's. It was like, and after I learned my lesson, then when Mays and Septembers came up, it was like I had to prepare for it,
Yeah.
or try to figure out what to do to minimize the effect of like this drop off that I always had. Right.
Yeah. And
So
I actually think I haven't, like, I've only finished one full year, but now that I'm coming up on the second time things have happened, and I kind of know, like, nobody's really gonna, not a lot of people are gonna do stuff with me in December, and I know it. And instead of really feeling stressed about it, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing the things that I know work. I'm gonna like stay the course because I know that it'll come back around. Business is cyclical. I get it. And I'm going to just try to enjoy that time. So if I'm quiet in December, I can do other things. Honestly, I have a list
playing
of,
Christmas, or
yes.
going on a trip or
Yep.
something like that, because
Yeah.
December, no matter what, it's just,
It's
yeah.
pretty slow for most.
I think everyone's preparing for the end of the year,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
everyone's
but
thinking about the holidays.
if you can just find like the beauty in that and figure out like, how do I just enjoy this slow month, knowing it's gonna come back around, and knowing that I'm still working hard, your results might look different because you can't control customers, clients. But I think in December I'm gonna still be networking. I'll probably have more time for networking, which is a really good thing as an entrepreneur. Like, keep yourself out there, keep
And
connecting
get
to
ready to
people.
start in January.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm
So,
gonna organize my closets. Like, I have already got a plan. I'm like, this is the thing I'm gonna do that has nothing to do with work, but I am gonna do it in December.
right. Yeah, because sometimes those months you might find, I don't know, just nothing. If nothing is happening, you might as well find something else to do or to plan for the next. So
Exactly.
it's just
Yeah. And that's the better way of saying what I was trying to say is, like, if you know it's going to happen, just figure out the way to make a best case scenario out of it, because I can't control when other people's budgets come out. I can't control their fiscal years. I can't control any of that stuff. But if I know what it's going to look like, at least I can just embrace the things that it gives me, which are like more flexibility, more time for my family, more time for myself. And then I know when January ramps back up, I'll be back to it again.
right. So speaking of the corporate world, so would you ever go back to the corporate world or the 9 to 5?
Ooh, that one's really hard. Um, every entrepreneur, everybody that I know that has gone out and done something on their own, asks this question of themselves like every few months in the first year. They're like, did I make a good decision? Should I go back? Um, I, I'm not going to say never, because now you've heard me say two things that I thought I was never going to do that have been part of my life that have been great. So maybe, but I do think I am so happy with what working for myself means for where I am at this point in life. It would be really hard to go back to the 9 to 5. Like, even the lows that we talked about, those lows are worth it for the work-life balance, for the time that I have, for the energy that I put in. Like, I'm super excited about what I'm doing when I get to do it. And even though sometimes I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to get this. I don't know if this thing's going to work out, but it's still like, those moments are fewer and far between than like all the happiness that comes out of it. So I'm not going to say never, but I would say it would be really hard. I'd probably be a very demanding employee. I'd be like, I know what work-life balance looks like. I know how to get my work done. Like, I'd have to go to a company that was super autonomous and results based and just really trusting. And they exist. I'd have to be
Yeah,
looking for it.
yeah, that's it would be. I think to me it would be strange. I've been
Yeah.
working for myself for so long. It's even when being in the military, my job in the military, we were um, there was a lot that we did that we had like as our team. We even had a lot of um, flexibility to be doing things on our own,
Yeah.
and so and I think that really where that entrepreneurship came from was I wanted do this on my, I don't want to be told what to do anymore.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
go back to something and I'm all of a sudden being told what to do, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't like this.
Right. And I mean,
Right?
when we talked, you were like, okay, I'm going to have to leave to go to school pickup or something. And, as
Hey, it's in the middle of the
entrepreneurs,
day.
yeah, everyone's like, okay, go do it. Like, good for you. Go. Nobody questions it, but
Yeah, if I
working
were
it.
to leave a regular
Yeah.
job, do they understand like going through carpool lines picking up 3 kids is going to take me 2 hours?
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
so
Yeah. And it's also like, I don't know, it's the trade-off of the things that are important to you and where you
right.
are in your life. I know that they're like, I've got friends that are single, don't have kids, and there's probably no way they would want to do what I do. They wouldn't want to go out on their own because they've got security, and that's like more important for
Yeah,
them.
sometimes it's scary to
Yeah.
do it on your own. Um, but then again, I've met guys, they've gotten out of the army and they're a project manager or
Yeah.
in some kind of sales or something. And when I'm talking to them, that's what you know, I don't know, they're either complaining or making jokes about like, I don't know, project manager jokes, right? Because it's
Everybody
all
gets
like
their
this,
PMP, right?
right? They're just like, and to me, it kind of sounded like they were just like,
Yeah.
you know, or the sales, they're flying around their whole region or something for, Monday through Thursday or
Mm-hmm.
even all the way until Friday. Now all of a sudden there's the weekend with their kids, but then they're also getting prepared to leave out on Monday again.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, that's difficult too. You might as well, I almost think, jump on a deployment and get it
Yeah.
tax free.
Tax free.
It's
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
gone all the time anyway. And that's,
Yeah.
someone I was recently talking to, they were doing that for, the past 2 years. And so it's like worn them out. Now they're trying to find a way to, you know, okay, now, yeah, I need to work for myself because this is just, he spends all day on an airplane, like almost
Yeah.
every day,
Yeah. That's
So,
when my husband got out. That was one thing. I was like, I don't want you to take one of those jobs where you're gone 4 days a week because it like you might as well just stay in the military. Like, because
right.
then you have like the community of people around you. If your spouse is deployed, if you go to your next door neighbor, their spouse might be deployed too. Like, they get it. You've got that comfort of having people around you. But in the civilian world, if your spouse is gone all the time, not everybody's like that. You've got
Right.
families that are all eating dinner together at 6 p.m.
Yeah. So being a spouse of a veteran, do you think they're a good fit for entrepreneurs themselves?
I think, yes. I think most veterans would do really well being entrepreneurs because the way like my husband has described himself, and this is what I hear a lot talking to veterans, is like, oh, I'm a jack of all trades. And you kind of have to be. Like, you have to be scrappy to figure things out. Like, you've got your title, you've got your MOS, whatever. But when you're deployed or when you've got some high stress situation, you're not like, oh, let me just wait and see if I can get somebody to figure this thing out. Like, you have to figure things out. And as a business owner in the last year, I've had to be super scrappy. Like, I was good at what I was doing, but I didn't know sales, marketing, operations. I didn't know any of that. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to figure those things out and kind of do them all, especially if you're starting as like an individual. So I think that aspect is great for veterans, like, come out and you get to do a little bit of everything. And I think they like doing different things. Like, I talk to a lot of veterans in transition. I'm passionate about helping them. And the most common thing that they tell me is like, well, this was my MOS, but I can do anything. And I'm like, you can, but it's very hard to go get your 9 to 5 corporate job being like, well, I could do any of these things. You have to narrow in. And I
Right. If
think,
you're just the jack of that trade, when you're getting hired somewhere, typically they're going to want to see some type of certification or training that you've
yep,
done it. But in the Army, there's so many things that we've done that you just learned how to do it.
yeah, you just figure it
I
out.
mean, I don't know, we were shorthand mechanics, so I was fixing my own Humvee. Like
Yeah.
that's the main mechanic would come over and just say, "Hey, here's this part. Find it on here and take it off and put this back on the same way." And you just learn how to do those things. Or
Right.
when you talk about marketing or sales, realize that I don't know, talking to a foreign leader or
Yeah.
another commander in the other army of in Iraq or Afghanistan or something like that, you're building that rapport and you're learning how to work with someone in a totally different culture
Yeah.
and work alongside them or convince them of something or basically selling them what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Or so those different aspects can really be applied into so many different jobs. But then again, it's hard for those jobs, and it is for them to really see what that value is. But if you can do it yourself, like you said, you knew HR, but
Yeah.
you didn't know
Anything else?
there's typically someone else doing marketing, someone else
Yes.
doing sales, someone else doing whatever, uh, running the books and the CRM and the client. It's all different. But
Yeah.
now as an entrepreneur, you're doing it all
Yeah.
all at
Which
once.
I think that's one of another benefit of like the franchising component of it is you can be an entrepreneur. Like you still get to do the things that are fun and exciting to me. Like you'd still get a lot of that benefit because no one's going to tell you exactly how to do it. But that benefit of franchising is like, you have support. Like you've got
Right.
maybe not day to day, but you've got a team that came up with marketing materials and they probably are giving
Well, yeah,
you.
and then in the first year, somebody from that franchise is calling you like every day saying
Yeah.
like, "Hey, what are you doing next? Let's talk about you know what you're going to go do this week." They're trying to make sure that you're staying on track.
Yeah.
And if you get off track a little bit, somebody's probably going to call you and say, "Hey, what are you doing?
What's right. Yeah.
Why did
Because
revenue just drop off this month?"
the franchise companies want these people to be successful. It's not like
Right.
they're like, hey, buy this and then we don't care what you do because it's their name and their brand too. So
Yes, you make money because of them and they're making money because of you. So there's some hand holding there that they, both, you both benefit from.
yeah.
So,
And I being on my own, I certainly didn't have that. It was like whatever happens, happens. Nobody was checking in on me and nobody was giving me like best practice for anything or tools to do anything. I was
oh, right.
figuring.
Yeah. You're spending half the day looking it up on Google or
Yeah.
something, or,
Or like,
yep.
okay, I know this person that does this thing. Like I've got friends that do social media marketing or content marketing or like, email marketing, all these things. And I'm like asking all these questions. How should I do this? When should I do this? So
Mhm.
the franchising thing is actually like really beautiful for people who want to have entrepreneurship, but want to have a little bit more structure. And I think that's probably why it's appealing to veterans because that's like the world that you lived in, right? Like
Right.
you said you had to figure it out, but then there's also like some structures, like you've got some rank, you've got some process that you go through, you've got those things.
There's guardrails in place.
Yes. And that's the same
know,
idea as a
so,
franchisee, right? Like you get to do something and there's some guardrails there to help keep you on track.
yeah. So what advice do you have for others that are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or creating their own path, whether a veteran or not?
Yeah. I think you need to set a big window for yourself to figure out if it's a right fit. Like, I think it's a fun thing that if anybody can try to go do it, if you've got an idea for something or you have the ability to invest in franchising, go do it. But just know that you need to give yourself some time to see if it works. Like, you can't say, I'm going to do this for 6 months and then decide if I should go get a job. You have to give yourself a few years to be able to really figure
Yep.
out if this is working for you, money wise, family wise, work wise. Is it providing all the things that you want? And I think that's been another lesson I've learned. I kept telling myself, get to the year mark and then you can make a decision. But at the year mark was probably when I really started like, oh, this is this is how things should be working. This is what I should be doing. So there was no way I could have made a decision there because I didn't have enough data. I didn't have enough examples. So I think I've told myself, like, okay, get to the 3-year mark. Like, let's see where we are at 3 years. Are you making what you want to make? Are you still loving the work? Are you loving the way that you have to do the work? Have you grown? Are you know, all of those things. And maybe that's even the second lesson is like, figure out what your metrics are going to be for measuring your success instead of just like, yes, I made money or no, I didn't. But like, what money do you want to make? Like, is money the only thing, or is just continuous growth a good indicator for you?
Right. Or measuring, again, back to like your work-life
Yeah,
balance, how much time were you able to have? Time is money.
for sure.
So sometimes, right. So, if you look at that, like if I were to have a regular job, I might be making less, but with then less time, right? Or I might, even if I'm making the same amount, if I was making the same amount that I am working for myself or working for doing a 9 to 5, what's better?
Yeah,
Being with my kids and being able to have that flexibility of what I want to do, or am I, you know, sometimes the security, but even then people think the 9 to 5 job is secure. But I've also taught, most of the time, I'm talking to people that have been laid off, or, they might be in their 50s
yeah,
and they're getting laid off. And that next job that's going to be difficult to get because now they're, I don't know, 57 years old, and, things have just changed.
yeah.
So it might be a different animal going back into a different company. So,
No, that's a
being
good point though. Like,
you don't act, it might not actually be as secure as you think.
yeah, and going and doing something on your own is maybe not as risky as you think. I mean, there is more of a risk, like if you've got to invest money into something, but especially like from the franchise side, like you can pull up data about what these places do. Like you've got tangible stuff, and not that everyone will be exactly on track, but you've got stuff to back up. Like, this is what this looks like. Like, yes, you have to put in a little bit, there's a little bit more
And you
upfront
might
risk.
have 300 other people out there
Yeah.
that you could actually call and say, what did you do during this time?
Yep.
Because they've been in it for years already.
Yeah. I
So,
know one of my friends who is a franchise owner, he was telling me that as soon as he got started, he found out who like the top performer was and like drove out to go meet with this person. And, it was like,
yeah.
I want to follow your lead. Like, something, you're doing a lot of things well, and just picked his brain and, spent time with him. And that's his go-to person now of like for questions, for how should I do this better? How do I navigate this thing? And I think, oh, that's a great thing to have
Yeah.
as
No, I've known
mentorship
people have
or,
done the same thing.
yeah.
You know, they were, they were doing their research on a franchise. And when they spoke to, someone who was one of the most successful franchisees, and found out how much money he was making and
Yeah.
everything, he said, I want to be that guy. And so, yeah, so he had to like, basically, I want to structure it just like that guy did,
Right.
So I don't know, dress like the guy that's above you. Don't, you know, so there are always those ones that, yeah, go rogue. Like I said, go rogue. That's probably one of the main reasons why people, will fail in franchising is go rogue, not show up to work, or
No.
just underfunded. Yeah, right. You have to show up to work.
Yeah.
Even if you are working for yourself, you still have to go to work.
And like I said, I think I have to show up more because I don't have the steady paycheck. And right now it's just me. So I can not show up today. That's fine. But if I keep not showing up, it's going to
Right.
reflect in, what my business looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. When you don't have clients for a certain amount of time, that starts to, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought of this, but one really good piece of advice. I have a business coach who is a friend of mine that I've known since I graduated college, and she's actually the one that was like, you should have been doing this all along. Like when I decided to go out on my own, I called her and I was like, oh, I have this crazy idea. I think I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to go out on my own. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have been waiting for you to figure this out for years. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, this is what you should have been doing. Like, this is your personality. This is, very aligned to you. So she's been a huge cheerleader for me. But one thing that she told me that I think is true, and people will see this happen in their business, is like, where you are now is the result of what you were doing 100 days ago. So like for me, I could not work this week, next week, I could do nothing. And I'll probably see that in the next quarter, like things will slow down because I'm not doing what I should be doing. And I think that's not my own piece of advice, but it's a piece of advice I was given that I think other people should realize too. Like your success isn't going to be tomorrow. Your failure is not going to be tomorrow, but whatever you're putting into it at some point is going to catch up to you.
Yeah. When I started doing this consulting and being a broker, I had someone else she's been in the business for a very long time, and very successful. She's probably like the top of our industry. And I just asked her, how long did it take for you to get to the point of just it? It was just more like your clients are more rolling in on a regular basis, that sort of thing. And she said it took about 4 years. And I was like, 4 years?
You're like, oh, that's really? A long time.
That sounds a lot longer than I was originally expecting.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it does take that time. So yeah. Amanda, well, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it, and all your advice you have for us veterans or anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. And so if your business needs someone like use Amanda's services, you can please reach out. And also for myself, if you're looking into a franchise or want to look into a business opportunity, reach out and I'd be glad to help. So
awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, Amanda. Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.